Welcome to Innovations and Breakthroughs with your host, Rich Goldstein, talking about the evolutionary, the revolutionary, the inspiration and the perspiration, and those aha moments that change everything. And now here's your host, Rich Goldstein.
Rich Goldstein here, host of the Innovations and Breakthroughs podcast, where I feature top leaders and the path they took to create change. Past guests include Kevin King, Steve Simonson, and Mike Calhoun. This episode is brought to you by my company, Goldstein Patent Law, where we help you to protect your ideas and products. We've advised and obtained patents for thousands of companies over the past 29 years. So if you're a company that has software, a product, or a design you want protected, go to goldsteinpatentlaw.com, where there are amazing free resources for learning about the patent process. You can also schedule a call with my team at speaktolarry.com to explore if it's a match to work together. You could also check out the book I wrote for the American Bar Association that explains in plain English how patents work. It's called the ABA Consumer Guide to Obtaining a Patent. I have with me here today Jim Padilla. Jim's been an entrepreneur for his entire life, and as founder of Gain the Edge, Jim is known in the personal development and business coaching world as the go-to guy for all things sales. He's a master collaborator whose purpose is to help entrepreneurs to leverage the power of collaboration to scale their businesses so that they can impact the world in the way that they intended. And with that, I'm happy to welcome here today Jim Padilla. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks for having me, Rich. We're glad to be here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My pleasure. So let's talk about the first thing I said there, which is that you've been an entrepreneur your whole life. So how did you get started on your entrepreneur journey?
Almost everything that I've done that has come to be a great outcome was started on accident. I wasn't me being this creative innovator. It was me saying yes to some opportunity somewhere that just materialized and became great. And that even started as a kid. I grew up in an abusive environment. I was in foster care early, teenager, and on the streets and gangs at 16 and in jail by 19. And I literally spent the whole first 20 years of my life learning how to read the room so that I could bend, will, and influence in my direction. So that was more like my safety mechanism. Little did I know that, years down the road, I'd be making millions of dollars teaching other people a similar skill set and how to read the room, bend, influence your direction so that you're not seen as a threat, but as an ally, so that people want to buy from you, let down their guard and be able to trust you. So, I started businesses and when I was literally in grade school and kindergarten. We didn't do lemonade stands, but we did just about everything else. Everything from buying back then, 25-cent candy bars and selling them at school for $1, all the way down to building up keychains and crafts and selling them on the street corners to cars passing by.
Yeah, absolutely. So then, and I guess in a sense, that's how you got involved in sales, right? Because those were all sales type businesses where it was you out there selling. And so kind of when did you and how did you move from having sales-based businesses to beginning to teach others how to sell and training others in sales?
It really was mostly out of necessity in 2008. I used to have an alarm company, home theater and CCTV and home security. And we were selling that for years, and then came across an opportunity to step into the mortgage push in the early 2000s when prices were going crazy and rates were dropping. And I jumped in on that opportunity as well. But we didn't really set up for success the way that we should have. We were mostly making money because we could, not because we were serving people. So when the rates turned and everything went bad, we lost our whole pipeline because we weren't really taking great care of people. But I knew how to sell. And so we went from putting mortgages in place to teaching people how to sell in a crazy environment. And that was, again, just an opportunity that landed itself for me. And I just had to learn all of the skill sets that I had gained that I had been using for primarily the wrong reasons. And then started recognizing that the best way to do this was really to be of service to people instead of just learning how to make money for myself.
Yeah. And so, first of all, like it's interesting how that works, right? That sales is possibly the best skill you could have in any type of economy or situation, right? Like if you can sell, there will be an opportunity for you. And so even in the midst of a huge downturn, like that really ruined a lot of people financially in 2008, because you had some sales skills, you were able to hit the ground running. And then also, one of the things you had to do was figure out what you actually knew how to do, right? Like you knew sales, but you probably didn't know how to explain what you knew, or even knew what it is that you did. Like, so to actually figure out and break down what it is you did that worked is probably one of the most difficult things for sales people to do. And that's why a lot of times you'll get a top salesperson promoted to be VP of sales, and then they can't run a sales team because they don't know how to teach what they do. They can't even explain what they do. They just kind of do it, right? So the thing that really set you apart was being able to actually figure out what you do and explain it to others. Is that fair?
That's right on the nose. Being able to decode a process is one skill set, and then being able to teach it is even another. And the Michael Jordans of the world, the Magic Johnsons of the world, they were legendary and Hall of Fame talent. And both, they had a really tough time coaching because they just couldn't impart the things that made them great into other people. And so it's not as easy as most people would think. So being able to break down what you do and then be able to teach it in a way that's actually understandable and actionable is definitely something that takes some blessing. One thing that we see often, and it's actually something we call a lot, we call out a lot, is people selling on what we call founder magic. And when you're the founder of the company, you know everything about the offering, the service, the price. You know everything before it was even a company. You know what stuff you've sold, you know what things you've done, you know what problems you've solved. So when you're talking to a potential client, you literally can pull anything out of your bag because you know it's there. Well, a salesperson doesn't know all of your history or all the off-menu items or all the other problems you solve. So they only have a limited skill set that they have to operate from. And so it's your job to be able to create a system, a process, and a strategy that will allow them to tap into the extra founder magic, quote unquote. So that way you're not tied to being the person that has to make all the sales.
Yeah. And I guess another part of that too is not only is it difficult to get a salesperson to then do it the way that you can, but it's also difficult to sell a business if it's pretty clear that part of what is leading to the success of the business is the founder. So the extent to which a business isn't transferable because it's all about the founder is the extent to which it's not sellable, right? Yeah. So it makes it even more critical to be able to do that.
100%. And even, if you're listening to this podcast, then being in Rich's world, then it's a good chance that exiting a company is probably somewhere in your future, or at least a thought. But even if you're not going to exit it, building a business so that it's exitable is the most rewarding business to run because everything works. Things work as good as they're going to. And so you actually have a lot more pleasure in the process. And the other thing that we tend to avoid is we want to make sure that you don't get stuck trying to build something that isn't really replicatable. You being selling from founder magic is not sustainable, is not replicatable, right? And it's not what your business was designed to do. Your business was most likely designed to fulfill on a product. And the part that's missing is how do you actually design the business so that it sells predictably and consistently and grows without you? And one of the other things that people do often as a solution is, well, what about a closer? What if I have just a high-end caliber salesperson? And that's great. But the challenge is to look for, and we see this all the time, which is why we do not install such people in people's company. But if you have a quote unquote closer, number one, they're hard to find. They're hard to retain. They're hard to keep. Once they show up, they're already looking for the next thing because they're always being recruited by other people. And they don't typically bring their own systems and processes. And so when the time comes that they leave, the one thing they're going to do great for you is earn revenue. But once they leave, they're going to leave you where you were before they found them. And you're likely not going to have any systems, processes, or strategies. And they're going to be trying to figure out how to replicate this person. So we literally intentionally don't go out and recruit top tier, quote unquote, high-end closers. We recruit quality humans who are top tier humans who can follow a process, be on brand and on value match for you and your company and understand what they're selling. But most importantly, they can execute a well-created system powerfully so that they can consistently and predictably overachieve for you.
Yeah. So that's probably one of the failings right there is a lot of people look to hire hire the skills rather than set up the process, right?
Right.
So it's just, and it really is a sobering notion there too. It's like when they leave, effectively you're back to where you began, and that's just seems so true.
Yes, that's a tough place to be in, and I don't wish it on anybody because I've been there. That's everything we've created has been out of, oh, we've done this wrong. So let's build a process, system, or strategy that's going to help us make sure that we don't do it wrong going forward. So you want to make sure that you're getting as many qualified booked appointments as you can. And a lot of that comes from just really dialing in what you converting well, having a system and a process that allows somebody to convert at a high level. Are you converting at 50% or better? And if not, that's our target for all of our clients. So we'll train to make sure that's happening. And then once we get you optimized, we build a sales playbook around it so that we can consistently perform at that level. And then you have a documented sales process, literally all the steps that you did are involved in you making a sale. So now there's a system, a process documented that can be handed to somebody else. Then we build in the automation that allows that system to actually be executed all the time. Because if you have a salesperson who is having to chase leads, and trying to work all of their own magic, they're going to be average. You don't want average. You want a human who can perform at above average because they know how to follow a system that's been well created for them.
Okay, yeah, and so like in terms of let's see if we can make some give some actionable advice to people that are listening that want to create such a process. So like where would they begin? Like what's a good starting point for this to think in terms of process rather than, well, let me just delegate. I'll find a closer and then that person can just do it. So where is the right place to start?
Yeah, great question. This is here's a few keys that I'll give you that if you start doing this, you'll be well on the way. First and foremost, you need to make sure that you have documented your process. So just look back over your shoulder. It doesn't require science or some big sales expertise. You just document what are all the steps that you typically lead people through in order for you to make a sale, starting from the time they get to know you. So do you speak on stage? Do you have a blog? Is it Google click ad? What happens? And then once they click on it, what happens next? What happens next? What happens next? Until they're at a place where they're buying from you. And if you document all of that, guess what? It's a process. Process and system does not mean technology. It just means system. You have a system for brushing your teeth.
Right. It might not be efficient and it might not it might not be optimal, but at least now you've got you've got what your process is as it exists.
Correct. So document everything. There now you have an analog process. Okay. Then start looking at what are the things that make if you ABC, which I call it again, trying to make it as simple as possible. ABC, your buyers. Well, who are the A buyers and why? Who are the people who buy all of your things? Who are the people who think you're amazing and love what you do and they can't wait for you to launch the next offering of some kind, right? Those are your A people. Now start replicating who those people are. What is special about those people and what makes them the A? What makes them what we call a QBA, a qualified booked appointment? Because a qualified booked appointment is somebody who's ideally suited to buy all of your things instead of just the thing you're selling today, right? So determine who is a highly targeted QBA. Then the next thing you want to start thinking about is what are the things that you want to qualify them? What are all the things that you can say, okay, you must be this tall to ride the ride. How do you determine what is this tall? Length of time in business, how much revenue they make, how big is their company, whatever it is, doesn't matter. It's your circus, your monkeys, you figure it out, but just make sure you know, and you get to choose. Don't make the mistake of choosing an avatar that is going to stress you out because it's not ideally suited for you, just because they're easy to find and maybe it can pay you, right? You determine who this person is that is going to allow you to thrive. And then you go find them because it is easier. They're everywhere, right? Our world is so interconnected. You can easily find the clients that you need to fill your practice and what you're doing. So the next thing that you want to think about is from a qualification standpoint, what are the things that they need? What are the things you absolutely don't want? So it's equally important to determine what are the things you want in a client as well as the things you don't want in a client. And like we tend to work with people who are accelerated in their growth and they desperately seeking the next stage of growth. We don't want to convince somebody that they want to grow. We are suited to work with scaling companies that are eagerly pursuing the next tier of success. And if that's not you, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just we just don't work with companies who are just looking to just make a little bit more growth. That's not what we're suited for. We're suited for fast speed and high growth, right? Then the next thing that you want to think about from a system perspective is what happens post offer. You have to have some kind of a post offer mechanism. So the first time you see somebody, first time somebody meets you, Rich, and they say, you know what, this sounds great. I think I love what you have, but I just need to get to know more. Well, then what? Right? How do they follow you? How do they stay engaged in your world? What events or education opportunities can be in place so that they can you still write these words down, you still remain relevant and valuable in their world over time, so that when they're ready to buy, you're the obvious person they buy from.
So you have to get them to opt into something or to have have some type of call to action for them so you can remain in contact with them and be top of mind.
Right. You want to make sure that you have, because no matter, even if you're converting at 50%, which is great, that still means 50% of the people you talk to aren't buying from you. Well, what are you going to do to make sure that a percentage of them do over time? Right. So it's your job to make sure that you stay relevant and valuable. And that's not a nurture system, which is what most CRMs deliver. A pipeline, and what we call it, is a sales function. So it's a way for your salesperson to stay in front of their prospects so that there's a relationship build. They're building a relationship with your people on behalf of you, right? So that there's a big difference from you sending out an email blast that says, hey, I'm having a webinar on Friday, versus your salesperson reaching out and saying, hey, Rich, remember that problem we were talking about? There's going to be a webinar on Friday, and I was thinking you need to be there because you'll really benefit. Those people show up and those people buy because it's a personal relationship instead of just some blasted email that they may or may not be interested in.
Right. Got it. So then part of it is maintaining that relationship and cultivating them for so that it occurs that you're making a personal invitation, for example, if you're going to invite them to a webinar, as opposed to just they're part of, they're getting spammed by you.
Correct. And, something to think about is if you're a founder, this is something we come across a lot. You might be thinking, but my community has been trained to connect to me. And I don't know if they're going to connect to somebody else. And all I will share with you is that that's just a story that you've told yourself. And everybody, no matter what community you're in, you have already trained people in how to engage you. So the good news is you can just train them differently. So even right now, everybody start writing an email like this. This is a message you should all give yourself right now. Welcome to my world in 2023. I have been growing and being blessed, and the world has been moving, and I'm starting to grow my company. And as a result, you're going to start seeing new things from me and new people in my world. Right. And here's my new team member, so-and-so, whatever. So just start letting people know, share what you're actually doing in your company, in your growth cycle with your audience, because then they'll be excited to know what's coming next. They'll know you got new products coming, new team. You're going to hear from my customer service manager, Elizabeth, and you're going to want to hear this from her. Hey, book appointment with my partner manager, right? Because you're going to start letting them know. So then they're going to start recognizing, oh, guess what? I don't have to talk to Rich every day now. I have a team of people that I can talk to, and I talk to Rich when I need to talk to Rich.
Yep. And that's it's very interesting that you bring this up, because this is something that I've been doing over the past couple of years, is seeking to make that shift. And one of the things that I did is, so Larry Slavin is the guy on my team that speaks with new prospects to see if it's a match to work together. And I set up speaktolarry.com where they could book an appointment with him. But inevitably someone meets me in person and they think like, Rich, like, let's get on a call to talk about a trademark. And for me, it's not worth it to get on every one of those calls. I would spend all of my time just getting on those calls, and for all the reasons we talked about, it's just not scalable. It's not good long term. So I send them to speaktolarry.com. And what I've done more recently is create a page there that kind of explains the handoff. I've got testimonials from people who are saying how great it was to talk with Larry, and how it really helped them to get what they needed. And there's a little note there for me saying, hey, you're probably wondering why is Rich telling me to talk to Larry? I want to talk to Rich. No, but Larry is the better one for you to talk with to kind of get things going and get things rolling for you in terms of working with us. And so, yeah, it's like making that handoff. And I was exactly like you described, saying, no, there's no way for them to work with anyone else. They all just want to work with me. But it's such an important step to take.
It is. And it elevates you. It starts separating. Now people go, wow, he's got a lot of things going on. So now his time is worth more and he must be doing more things. They start making assumptions on their own that are good. If somebody assumes, well, you're too big for me now, you're too uppity, I don't want to work with you because you can't give me all of your time. What they're really doing is they're telling you they're not ready to grow with you to the next stage of your business. So they might stay where they're at or go someplace else. But as you start to climb, you're going to start attracting people who want the bigger version of you. And they know that you have a team and you have the resources now to solve bigger problems for them. And that's what you want. You want people who want to be on that ride with you, on that journey, that say, I'm going to stick around with this guy for a long time because he's going places and I want to go there too.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I'm going to zoom in on a little micro topic here. Okay. And that has to do with appointment setting. So if you're, there are different ways that people run a sales process. Sometimes they bring them right to talk with the quote unquote closer, right? Other times they do it through another person, referred to commonly as an appointment setter, whose job really is to qualify the person and get them ready for the conversation with the quote unquote closer, right? So what do you think about that? Like, what do you think? Do you think that it's an important part of the sales process to have a multi-segmented process where there is that appointment setting person interjected into it? Do you find that to be effective?
There's, every strategy works and every strategy doesn't work. I know it's a cop-out answer, but there's a time and a place for all of it. I do believe, because your typical quote unquote closer, they're somebody who, they kind of eat what they kill, quote unquote, and they know how to move people across, but they often come with other baggage, meaning like they don't follow up. They don't necessarily build rapport and relationship well. They want to capitalize in the moment. And so it's really good to have a balance on your team of somebody who is a farmer, who is a nurturer, who can keep those relationships going, keep people wanting to answer the phone when you call, so that when the time is ready, you tee them up for the opportunity with the person who can help them make that decision powerfully and walk across the line, like AKA your closer. But if you're using an appointment setting process, then the thing that you want to be good about is really understanding what does triaging look like. Because your appointment setter is your triage person, ideally. Their job to get people to actually wake up, answer the phone, et cetera. So it's not just somebody who's performing a task of calling people. It's somebody who knows how to diagnose and position the next step. So that if I'm talking to you, it's not just, hey, we got this appointment coming up with Steve. Can I get you on a call with him? It's, what's the problem that you were trying to solve that you still haven't? And are you committed? Are you more committed now than you were? And let me ask you 3 or 4 questions, because based on how you answer these questions, I know if I should set you up with an appointment with Steve or send you another book.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so that person needs to have a good understanding of what the world looks like in the ideal client's world, so they know how to navigate them through the journey of making that next big decision.
That's great. And it really returns to the theme of what you've been saying, which is the way in which you set up the process makes all the difference. So what you're speaking to there is really having a process in place for the appointment setter. So a process within a process, like there's their process for how they qualify someone, how they triage them, how they get them excited for what's next. And so again, return to the power of the process.
Always. It's the two things. I was blessed to play college baseball, and I coached some high-level athletes in high school basketball for years. And something that was thrown around a lot when I was growing up is that people don't typically rise to the occasion. They fall to the level of their preparation and their processes. And so the more you prepare, the better you prepare. And those systems will allow you to prepare differently. So you'll know how to leverage those steps. Their systems and processes and preparation is going to be what determines how much success you have. Because when the push comes to shove and the what hits the fan, as they say, then that's when what opens up is how well have you been prepared and how great do your systems work. Very rarely is it going to be, I'm just magical and I'm going to fix this, because that just doesn't happen.
Right. So in terms of being prepared, then you've recently launched a process, or you've launched a system for helping people to create their scalable sales. Would you like to tell me a little bit about that and what you're doing there?
I absolutely appreciate that opportunity. Our company, in our current format, we've been in business right around almost 10 years now, and we spent most of our time serving higher end expert companies, people in the top 10% of the industry, 7, 8, 9 figures. And what we do is as a done for you sales team is what people would hire us for, and we would come in and build out their systems. And ideally we come in to sell their product, but then we found out that they were missing systems and strategies and structure. So we then had to start building that stuff. So what we have done now is, in recent years, we've taken all of the systems, strategies, and structure that we put into those clients, and we've decided to start selling them. We've productized them. So now we have a scalable sales system that we then can install inside of a company. And the first phase of it is getting your sales process documented and a sales playbook built, so that we're getting you to a place where you're converting at 50% or better, then documenting and building a system around it, so that then we can bring in the automation that will up level that in the qualification process, and then put a salesperson in place. Because we won't put a salesperson in place, and we don't recommend you do, until you have this documented process and the strategy already in place. And it doesn't sound sexy and exciting, but I can tell you this: I can give you a salesperson in a week, and he'll ruin your business for a year. So don't let that stuff happen. And so that's what we have. We have scalable sales system. And the first phase of this is our adaptive conversations for conscious selling, which is designed. It's a relatable communication leadership program that is designed to have you walk people effectively, partner with them to be able to make great decisions in their own best interest, instead of showing up selling a product.
Yeah, no, that sounds amazing. Actually, I'd like to check that out. So if people want to learn more about you or get in touch with you, how do they go about doing so?
The best way to go is, if you're watching here, you got the jimp360.com here. There's also a QR code that you can scan that will take you there. Or you can just type in with your fingers, jimp360.com, which will take you to my personal website, and you'll find everything there about me, all of our websites, all of our social medias, etc. But before you do that, while you're listening here, go to that page and then click on the contact button and download me into your phone. Shoot me a text. Find the one button there that says text. Shoot me a text with your name, the podcast here that you heard me, and just put in there anti-closer, right? So we have an anti-closer process that we want to put in front of you, and we want to give you a resource so that you can start this process of documenting for yourself what is the system, strategy, processes that I need in place, so that I don't have to go out and hire a bunch of closers, and I don't have to live on founder magic trying to sell my wares and my services and my company.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I love it. And Jim, thanks so much for taking the time to do this program. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, pleasure. And I look forward to all the growth that you have going on as you've been starting to scale your company.
Thanks for listening to Innovations and Breakthroughs with your host, Rich Goldstein. Be sure to click subscribe, check us out on the web at innovationsandbreakthroughs.com, and we'll see you next time.